All right, welcome to the Explainer. Today we're digging into some fascinating work by Professor David S. Law to solve a real puzzle about the U.S. Supreme Court. You see, it has this one really strange habit, and it makes it a total outlier on the world stage. So think about it. The U.S. Supreme Court, it's probably the most powerful court on earth, right? Its decisions send ripples all over the globe. And yet, it has this really weird habit. When it's deciding big constitutional questions, it acts like courts in other countries just don't exist. And I'm not exaggerating here. I mean, look at this. Between 1986 and 2010, less than 0.3% of its constitutional opinions even mentioned foreign law. That is an incredibly tiny number, especially when you consider that most other high courts are constantly talking to each other, so to speak. So the big question is, why? What's going on? Okay, so to get to the bottom of this mystery, first, we've got to look at the two most obvious explanations. You can think of them as the usual suspects. These are the arguments you hear all the time, but as we're about to see, they don't really tell the whole story. So theory number one is that the justices are just, well, isolationists. That they're out of touch and couldn't care less about what's happening outside the U.S. But when you look at the actual evidence, yeah, that idea just doesn't hold water. And here's where it gets really ironic. The late Justice Antonin Scalia, he was the most famous and vocal opponent of using foreign law. But guess what? He was a total globetrotter. He was constantly visiting foreign courts, speaking at international events. He even taught comparative law way back in the day. So you see, this isn't about some simple fear of the outside world or not having enough contact with it. All right, so if it's not isolationism, what about the other usual suspect, political heat? And yeah, it's absolutely true that citing foreign law is a political minefield in the United States. But that explanation kind of falls apart when you zoom out and look at the rest of the world. Take parts of East Asia, for instance. There's zero political controversy about it over there, but you still see huge differences. Some courts use foreign law all the time, others almost never. So politics, on its own, just can't be the full answer. So the obvious answers just aren't cutting it. That means we have to go deeper. It's time to pull back the curtain and look at the hidden mechanics of how these courts actually work on the inside. And this is where we hit on a really, really important distinction. See, you can't just count the number of times a court cites foreign law in a written opinion. That's just the tip of the iceberg. Turns out, a lot of courts, especially in what's called the civil law tradition, they use foreign law all the time in their background research. They just have a strict style rule that says you don't mention it in the final paper, so to speak. And this leads us to the real answer. It's not really about ideology or politics, not at its core. It's about the hidden machinery of the courts themselves, their fundamental design. It's about what these institutions are actually built to do in the first place. So what Professor Law's research shows is that for a court to really engage with foreign law on a regular basis, you need two key things working together. First, the court has to have the capacity. Does it have the right staff, the right researchers, the right resources? And second, you need a legal education system that's churning out lawyers and judges who actually have the skills and the interest to do this kind of deep comparative work. Let's look at the Japanese Supreme Court, for example. They're dealing with a massive caseload. We're talking over 12,000 cases a year. With that kind of insane volume, there's just no time to do deep dives into what courts in Germany or Canada are doing. Add to that a general attitude of indifference and the fact that their law clerks don't need any foreign law training, and what you get is very low usage. It's a perfect example of how a court's ability to do the work is a massive and often totally overlooked piece of the puzzle. But wait, capacity is only half the story. As we dig into why some courts are all in on using foreign law and others aren't, something really surprising pops up. A hidden motivation that, believe it or not, has almost nothing to do with just figuring out their own law. And that brings us to this really cool core concept, judicial diplomacy. It's this powerful idea that courts are not just legal bodies operating in a bubble. They're also acting as diplomats on the world stage, and they use their judicial practices to play a strategic game. You see, for a lot of courts out there, especially in countries that are developing or maybe a bit isolated, citing foreign law is so much more than just finding a clever legal argument. It's a strategic move. It's a way to build their prestige, to project influence, to tell foreign investors, hey, we're legit, and even to build alliances with other courts. It's basically law as foreign policy. Okay, so let's circle all the way back to where we started, the U.S. Supreme Court.
How does this new idea of judicial diplomacy help us figure out what's going on there?
Well, it completely reframes the whole question, doesn't it? The U.S. Supreme Court doesn't need to cite foreign law to get prestige or influence. It's already the most powerful and well-known court in the world. So it practices judicial diplomacy in other ways, by hosting judges from all over, by traveling and speaking, by being part of that global conversation in person. It's still a diplomat, it just uses a different set of tools.
So in the end, the big takeaway is this. The whole debate about using foreign law isn't just about what individual judges want to do. It's so much deeper than that. It's about what their institutions are built to do, what their capacity is, what their lawyers are taught, and what their country needs on the world stage.
And that leaves us with one last really fascinating thought. The next time you see some high court cite a ruling from another country, ask yourself, are they just making a legal point, or are they making a diplomatic move? It kind of forces you to see these judges not just as legal scholars, but as serious players in the great game of global politics.